Hello and welcome to the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee, and today I wanted to ask, are you a secret wargamer? So before I start, I just wanted to say apologies if you hear any random strange noises in the background. My neighbours are building a gigantic conservatory, or at least I hope it's a conservatory. For all I know, it could be a gigantic marijuana farm. They've been at it for weeks, and they're being particularly noisy today, presumably because the weather's good outside. So if you hear any screwing, hammering, banging or other noises, it's probably them. Anyway, on with the video. So today I wanted to discuss, are we, or are you, secret wargamers? Did you shield your hobby interests from the non-gamers in your life? Do, for instance, your colleagues know about your hobby? Would you put your hobby down on your CV, for instance? Some do, some don't. It's a difficult question. I've discussed it many a times before on my blog. I've had plenty of conversations about this with people, and there is no definitive one-size-fits-all answer. It really depends on your own circumstances and the people that who might encounter that information. So I would assume that if you've got a blog or a YouTube channel, the chances are that you are fairly open about your hobby interests, but there may well be people viewing today's video who don't. So this is just a discussion of, are you a secret wargamer? So as I say, I have discussed this before on my blog many a times, but this particular video is sort of originates from a conversation I had with my daughter recently. She's in the process of looking at sixth forms and sixth form colleges, and she's being asked to write a personal statement. And in the definitions of what colleges and sixth forms want in that personal statement, they want a bit about personal interest, extracurricular activities and so on. And we had quite a long conversation about gaming and all of the different things that she does that are as a result of her interest in gaming. I personally suggested that putting that down on a personal statement isn't necessarily a bad thing. She's still a young person at the end of the day. It's not to be unexpected that they would have an interest in some form of gaming, and particularly the subjects that she wants to study. So she's passionate about history. She's played plenty of historical war games with me. History is one of the subjects she wants to do at A-level. Similarly, she's very much into her art. She wants to do art at A-level, and she's into photography, partly as a result of gaming, and that is an area that is going to come up in her A-level, and it has done at GCSE level. And she's a prolific writer. She's published stuff privately, and as fan fiction and things like that. She's quite amazed, to be honest, with her level of ability. So she does enjoy writing, and she's looking forward to a career where she gets to do writing in the future. And of course, being a gamer involves a lot of that, a lot of planning, creation, putting ideas down and so on. So again, another asset in that respect. It shows a level of critical thinking and creativity that maybe other hobbies wouldn't show. And of course, actually playing games, it's all about strategy, planning, critical thinking, collaborative skills. So I actually think it's quite an advantage for her to put that on her personal statement at this stage. Obviously emphasise other things as well, but after that conversation she still didn't want to do it, and I don't blame her to a certain extent. I mean, many years ago, when I was about her age, I had to make similar decisions. I had to do applications, slightly older than her actually, applications for university and then later on for work. And I had to make a decision, was I going to be open about my hobby or was I going to hide it? And at the time, I decided to keep my hobby interests to myself. I was young, I was ambitious, I imagined that I might have a glittering career in front of me. And I didn't want my hobby to make me look immature. I lacked the maturity to really discuss it and analyse it and present that information to people at the time, and I was afraid that it might come across and be criticised, and that I wouldn't have the ability to be able to sort of defend my hobby in a positive light. That's not something I feel now, but very much at the time, and I understand at her age as well, you're very much afraid of what other people will think. So 30 years have now passed since I made those earlier decisions about my supposedly glittering career. I'm older, slightly more mature, definitely a lot more confident and a lot more comfortable with who I am, and considerably less afraid of what other people might think about me. The result was that about 12 years ago, I made a conscious decision to start blogging. You know, going on the internet definitely blows your cover, and I went full hog. So I not only started a blog, I went on Facebook and Twitter and lots of other social media and started to put stuff out there about my hobby interests. You know, social media has a lot of faults. There is no doubt about that. I'm not rosy tinted glasses about it. You know, I do appreciate that it has a lot of faults, but certainly I think that for the gaming community, it has developed a very good community, a lot of support. We've had so much help over the years from random strangers who have come across information on my blog or on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and have offered help for things. And you know, and it's just a wonderful gaming community, and it's always good to meet people at shows when you finally get to go to them, whenever that might be. But yeah, I mean, social media has its faults, but definitely it has a benefit as far as our hobby is concerned. But once you go there, you've definitely, absolutely definitely blown your cover as being a wargamer. So the next question would be, you know, has it hurt my career and my professional reputation? Well, I genuinely don't think it has, actually. You know, my colleagues and superiors know about my hobby. They have done for the last decade or more. You know, I've done Zoom meetings here in the operations room, so they can see the pictures on the wall or my books behind me, even models occasionally. It hasn't bothered them. In fact, people show quite a bit of interest. You know, I get to talk to a lot of colleagues about my hobby, their interests, and you often find actually they've got a lot of interest in it as well. And certainly I've had promotions and pay rises since, and I think I'm fairly well respected within my company, so I genuinely don't think it's made a blind bit difference to my career. And one of the advantages of being fairly open is that, as I already suggested, you know, I have encountered people with similar or overlapping interests. Maybe not wargamers, people who are interested in their military history or family history, people who play other types of games, board games, computer games and so on. And occasionally I've even come across closet wargamers, people who are keeping their hobby quiet because they think it's going to damage their career in some way. And they're often amazed when they suddenly realise that this person within their organisation that they know in a professional capacity is a wargamer as well. I'm certainly... I think it makes you more interesting than colleagues who just say their hobby is socialising, for instance. I remember there was an event at work where we all had to open the conversation by describing something that we did outside of work. What was our main hobby or activity? And you know, half the group there, their idea of a hobby was socialising, i.e. going down the pub or going out eating and drinking. And you know, I said, I'm a blogger. And I've had 3 million hits on my blog, and people are suddenly interested, and that leads on to talking about my hobby. And you know, I didn't make a big deal out of it, but it's certainly more interesting than saying I like going down the pub. Now, there's nothing wrong with going down the pub, but if that's literally all that you've got in your life, then I suggest you need another hobby. Now, when I try and talk about my hobby to people, I always try and up the benefits of my hobby, the benefits of being a gamer. You know, thanks to my hobby, and this is something that we probably all agree with to a certain extent, that I've developed lots of skills and knowledge that I probably wouldn't have if I would, I don't know, been someone interested in fishing or just football or whatever. You know, one other hobby. My interest in gaming has spread out into lots of different areas. You know, I have a keen interest in history and therefore in politics, in art. You know, I've developed skills in photography, digital editing, web publishing. I'm now, through the wonder of YouTube, learning about filmmaking, presentation. These are all skills that have overlap with my work environment that I probably wouldn't have learned unless I've been forced to as part of my job. You know, but because of my hobby, I've learned and I've picked up those skills. And while that may not be everyone's idea of something to put on your CV, I certainly think it is worth doing it. You know, and of course nowadays it's also worth saying that having a wide and interesting hobbies like this is good for your mental health, which is a very topical subject these days. You know, people are starting to realise that mental health and that work-life balance is actually quite important for good and productive employees. So I would say that having something interesting on your CV is not necessarily the I don't know, stigma maybe that you might have thought it might have been back in the past. Now, having said that, I think putting your hobby interests on your CV is a good thing. It is very much a matter of presentation, because presentation manages perception. You know, if you just put Wargamer on there, people will fill the blank void with everything that they can think of, and if they don't know the hobby, or they've only got stereotypes in their head, that's what they'll imagine when they see "I am a Wargamer" written on a CV. Right? Flatly describing yourself like that lets the observer apply their preconceptions and their prejudices onto that single word. Whereas describing your skills and knowledge that you've picked up as a result of your hobby lets you set the criteria for how your hobby is perceived. So, you know, you can say, I write a gaming blog, I have so many thousand viewers and readers, I've done web publishing, blah blah, and all of this is linked into my overall hobby of wargaming. And it's a much different, you're framing the conversation rather than letting the reader put their preconceptions onto it. But of course, you know, not everyone can go full nerd. You know, you've got to be careful, and it's like anything. You're going to put it on your CV. You've got to word it carefully, and it's going to depend on your setting, of course. Now, if you're getting a little bit twitchy at this point, I just remind you that gaming has gone. Well, it is very mainstream now. It's not the nerdy niche hobby that it once was, perhaps. You know, it's much more visible in popular culture. You've only got to look at, you know, popular TV programs like The Big Bang Theory and Stranger Things to know that role-playing, for instance, is become much more mainstream. People see it as normal. You know, D&D, for instance, is having a resurgence. Lots of popular TV personalities and film personalities are open about playing. You know, it's not such a nerdy niche that it once was, and certainly it's not something that I think you should be embarrassed about. And you know, popularity of programs like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings has also given a huge boost to fantasy wargaming. And while I can feel the historical wargamers out there rolling their eyes and drawing in a deep breath, there is a route into the hobby, and so it should be celebrated, even if you yourself aren't a fantasy wargamer. So, to conclude, what would you do? What should you do? Should you reveal who you are? It very much depends on the status of your job. You know, your ability to manage perceptions, as I've already discussed, and to a certain degree, the political sensitivity of the period that you play. You know, it's very much a personal decision. I don't have the answer. I'm not going to say to you, you have to do this and you have to do that, but I'd say it's worth giving some serious thought to whether you should just be open about what your hobby interests are. You know, what challenges, I'm interested in knowing how you have handled this particular subject and what challenges you have encountered and overcome. You know, are you open about your hobby to your friends and colleagues and so on, customers even? You know, or do you play it much more low key? So I'd really love to hear your personal stories in the comments below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope it's stimulated a bit of conversation. I know it's one that many of us probably have had many times before, but it's always worth revisiting, I think, and re-looking at it as you get older and know a bit more and perhaps get a bit more mature and a bit more confident in who you are. Obviously, if you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and, of course, consider subscribing to my channel. And of course, as I've already said, you know, please leave some comments below or over on my blog, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures. So until next week, I hope everyone's getting in as many games as they possibly can. I hope you're all staying safe in these difficult times. And of course, as always, keep rolling high.